The Mountain West football schedule's been released. Let's talk about the Beavs and the Cougs.
College football is always in the news, so we're back on the Big Mountain to keep you updated.
Hey, it's great to have you here on the mountain. I am JY, and this is my good friend Steve. It's great to have you here. We are going to go over the schedule, or at least the highlights of the schedule, of the Beavs and the Cougs. The Mountain West schedule was just released, as I'm sure everybody knows. They're in a scheduling agreement with them for 2024. Steve, I looked over the schedule. I've got about 4 or 5 dates here that I just want to highlight. Some of what I would call their most important games, some obviously out of the Mountain West Conference and some in the Mountain West Conference. So let's look at September 14th, the big one here for both teams. Oregon versus Oregon State and Washington versus Washington State. The Washington State game going to be played at Lumen Field, which is where the Seahawks played. So that'll be pretty cool and pretty fun for these teams. Games that we weren't sure originally if they were going to happen, but they are going to happen. I'm glad for both Oregon State and Washington State that these are going to continue and hopefully continue into the future for quite a long time.
So Civil War and Apple Cup. Right?
There you go.
Yeah, those are national rivalry games. Ton of attention. Glad they were able to keep these going.
I think technically they don't call it the Civil War anymore, but everybody still does.
It's the Civil War.
We're going to do it. Yeah. So let's talk about September 28th. A big one here. Washington State going to Boise State. So, a team that Steve and I think could cause some noise here in both the Mountain West and nationally, possibly. So a really big game here for both of these teams. What are your thoughts early on here, Steve? Washington State, Boise State.
Yeah, a huge game. I think Washington State, like we've talked about before, they're returning a lot of people. Boise State, I think next year is set up for them perfectly with Genty coming back. A lot of expectations out of them. I think it's set up just perfectly to make a national run at one of those college football playoff spots. And if they can do that, if they're able to do that, people will look back at this game as this was a huge, important game to kind of set that national perception about them.
Yeah, and 2 weeks after that, again, we're going to stay on the Cougs. October 12th, they travel to Fresno State. So, two of the better teams in the Mountain West, they're going to have to go to within a 2-week period here. Another game, I would say, piggyback on what you just said. The Washington State-Fresno State game, really could propel one of these teams to better places overall for the season. I'm anxious for this team, or this game. I'm really anxious for this game. I think this could become, depending on what happens over the next few years, a pretty good rivalry between these two teams.
Yeah, and here's the thing. These games you just talked about, I know we're only halfway through the video, but already illustrates to me how this was such a win-win, this partnership between the Mountain West and the remaining Pac-2 teams. It gives the two Pac-2 teams a good schedule. I mean, those are really good, solid games. And really, playing Boise State and playing Fresno State, how is that really that much different than playing Stanford and Arizona State and some of those other teams they were playing? This might be better football games for them to show. And then for the Mountain West, for two of their better teams, these are showcase games.
Yes.
I think the national perception about Washington State and Oregon State still among people, when they look at it, if a Boise State beats one of them or Fresno State beats Washington State, it'll be looked at nationally as they're beating a power conference team.
Yes.
So that's huge for these Mountain West teams. So really, really beneficial. Just talking about those games really illustrates that for me.
Yeah, so let's talk about November 23rd, the only Pac-12 game to be had this next year. Washington State at Oregon State. That'll be a fun game. I mean, they always play each other really, really close. Well, most of the time, not all the time. I may have overstated myself saying all the time. But this is going to lead to, I think, something even bigger, right? I mean, and this is a game that I think both teams clearly are going to have to get up for. There's got to be all kinds of media interest in having the one Pac-12 football game next year, right? Like, who doesn't want to be able to show that game?
Absolutely.
And I know we don't have any media agreement yet, but apparently it's coming here soon, they say. So that'll be a fun game. I know I'll be watching it.
Heck yeah. I'm really excited for it.
Then the last game, Oregon State at Boise State. The last one we're going to talk about, I should say, on November 30th. closing out the season for both of these teams could be a huge game for both of these teams, depending on how the whole rest of the schedule lays out there. Really anxious for this. I love that it's at the very end of the season. I don't know if that was done intentionally or not by the Mountain West schedule makers, but that could be a huge game for these two teams, for both of the teams. We're talking college football playoffs, rankings, all that kind of stuff. Really anxious for that November 30th game.
Good opportunity for Oregon State to show, hey, we're still a premier team.
Yep.
You know, we can get a win over an upstart or whatever, a team like Boise State. But also, conversely, really another just good opportunity for Boise State to put another feather in their cap, another dynamic line on their resume. So win-win for both teams. Great opportunity. And again, I'm just loving this partnership of the Pac. We'll say Pac-12.
Yes,
there's only two teams.
They want us to say, yes.
Of the Pac and the Mountain West coming up with some great games. I'm loving this partnership, and I'm excited because I know these are going to be in those late windows. So you and I will be Saturday nights watching these games, texting each other, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I love that nighttime football.
Absolutely, totally agree. And yeah, welcome to the Mountain West, at least for a year, Beavs and Cougs. A lot of positive stuff coming out of both Commissioner Navarez for the Mountain West about how this is going to go. Just recently, we did a Pac-12 update. You had some of what Schultz was saying regarding these games. He's looking forward to having his teams and his fans be able to go to new places. He talked about Hawaii, and he talked about Reno, and he talked about all these places. So, a lot of things. I know they're trying to sell it, obviously, get the positives on it. I think it's going to be good for both teams. I'm anxious to see how competitive some of these games are, especially the ones we just highlighted. I think these are the highlight games for both sides, the Pac and the Mountain West. Anxious to see how we stand up, and let's see if it continues into 2025. But I'm not getting ahead of ourselves. I am focused on 2024. Really excited for it. So, hey, with that, make sure you give this video a like. Give us a subscribe. We do everything Mountain West, Big Ten, and Pac for right now, at least for 2024 and football season. And with that, hey, we'll see you guys next time on the Big Mountain.
I see the beginnings of a beautiful relationship.